right, folks. Welcome to No Followers Podcast. That's T. I'm Bob. We're here to talk the real lingo of business and building your products and all the crap you hear from other people that usually doesn't make any sense because they read it in a book. And no offense to people trying to help you, but you also have to know where they're coming from. And T and I have been together for a long time having those arguments. And we're going to have arguments here all the time because he doesn't see the world the way I do and vice versa. And that's good. It makes a good team. So there's lesson number one.
There you go. Yeah. And part of it, too, is just coming in and saying these are real things that we're seeing day to day and trying to break it into digestible snippets for people so that they may be able to identify with some of it and say maybe they're facing it in their own business or they're thinking about starting a business, and it can be overwhelming, and just trying to get into some of the real things that go on out there and try to avoid some of the missteps, let's call them, that others of us have walked.
Yeah, and that we've all made, right? And I think the bond between T and I is because we freely share our failures and what we learn from them, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes what we refuse to give up. But, you know, as we're building this incubator, we're meeting a lot of people that have all made the same mistakes. And our job, we view it, or our mission, is to kind of catch them earlier. Like, it's not going to guarantee you success, and that's the first thing that I can't stand, that people are guarantee. Okay, there's no guarantee. There's a million things that go wrong in any idea to execution. But if we can mitigate some of that, that's really where we are.
But you're not wrong, though. And I mean, you hit on something, too, which is...
What did you just say?
I'm not repeating it. Damn it. But the point of the podcast is to accompany the incubator that we're doing, which is, you know, to say that one of the conversations that, and like you were saying, one of the things that kind of brought us to the table, so to speak, not necessarily this table.
This fake wood table?
This is a real wood table, despite what some critics have said, is the fact that, like you said, we're honest and open about our mistakes. But I think if anyone is in any sort of a growth, I'm not even going to say growth mindset, because I think that's a little bit of an overhyped term, but if they're looking to grow either an idea into a product, which, again, not necessarily meaning business, but idea into product, or that product into a business. Knowing what you bring to the table and what you don't, to me, is kind of step one. Because it's going to get into how you build your team. It's going to get into how you make versus buy decisions, you know, especially we're product focused. So what are you going to make? What are you going to buy? How are you going to handle all that? And I think a lot of that stems from having the emotional intelligence and the self-awareness of what do I bring to the table? What do I still need? And for us, a lot of that has always come down to what are mistakes that we've made. And I can speak for myself personally that there have been a few times where I thought, this is what I'm going to do. And it's not that you said to me, don't do that. But you
I did.
You said, I've done this before.
And more than a few times.
And I did that exact thing, and it didn't turn out so hot, you know, and so it kind of saves you from going down that road. But
I think there's a step before that, too. So we're meeting a lot of people that still have an idea.
Yeah.
Like it's on a piece of paper, and that's awesome, right? It all starts with an idea, but the idea is never going to get to a business without testing that idea in the real world. And I think that's where a lot of other programs go wrong, because their metric is tied to a number of people in the program or a number of applications put towards something. We have one metric, and we've always been brutally honest with each other. It is getting a product into the market that's selling. And that we don't always hit it. We don't always end up doing it, but that's always our goal. So we're aligned with anybody we're working with is we're going to make this product and we're going to get into the market. And then the market's going to tell us what we did wrong. And then we're going to pivot, or we say it's not viable.
Right.
And I think that's the difference to a lot of the programs that we've dealt with, that we see, that we read about, that get a lot of hype. They're not moving the needle for anybody. And they're not telling enough people no.
Right. Well, and it goes into the thing we always say, which is actually moving the needle. And you just said it again. And that's what it comes down to, is each business is not necessarily in the same point. Each idea is not necessarily at the same point. So it's how do you take stock of what you have and figure out what does that mean to move the needle for me, for my company, for my idea, for my product, if that's where you're trying to go. But a lot of what I think you're getting at is one of the things we talk about and look for, which is coachability, which is how you may have the best idea in the world. If you as the founder are not coachable, then that's going to translate to the market tells you X, Y, or Z, and you don't want to hear it. And that's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. And so that kind of gets after some of the things we look for, but also just kind of one of the things that you as a founder are going to need to be taking stock of, in my opinion.
But that's such a slippery slope, because as inventors and as entrepreneurs, you have to grow a thick skin because everybody thinks you're an idiot.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, oh, you don't have a job?
Yeah.
Okay, I've been doing this for like 30 years. I haven't had a job. Okay, that's fine. But, right?
But when you're out there on the corner with your little mug and your cup, you're doing good, so it's all right. Yeah. But I mean, it is a balance of having a thick enough skin, but also having the emotional intelligence to be able to listen to what the market is saying and vetting where the information's coming from, right?
And I think a lot of people take advice from people that tell them what they want to hear, and we run into that. Like, we throw a lot of clients out as In Focus. We're not going to take you because it doesn't work. We know our team's been together so long. We know how we work. We know how we work optimally. We know who we work with well. And we're not telling you what you want to hear. We're telling you what we think you need to hear. And you don't have to listen to us, right? And we've had 100%. People, and we're going to eventually show some products of people that sat across from us and said, I don't agree with you. And then go. That's fine. Like, go do it on your own then. But here's the things that you've missed, because we've been doing it for so long. There are things that no one thinks about. We just had an hour-long conversation about events and going to conferences, and people don't think of how to use that properly. And that's a cost. And if you don't get a return on it, you're just throwing money out the window.
Right. You could go to every event in the country, pick your industry. You could go to every trade show in the country and pick your setup and factor all those costs in and all those things. What are you going to the event for? What's your outcome from that? Is it to sell t-shirts? Is it to sell your product? Is it to make connections? And how does that tie into what your actual marketing and branding plan is? Instead of just, kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, I'll pick on the green and sustainable movement for.
What do you mean? Everything's green and sustainable.
Everything's green, but it's hysterical because you go to those expos and they have all that crap out, and none of that's sustainable.
Yeah, all the giveaways. Yeah,
all the giveaways. Swag, which stands for something, which I don't think we can repeat here, but that's interesting. So. Yeah. It has to tie into your brand and your culture and your message, but also, more importantly, we go to a lot of conferences with no booth. We're going there to meet people. And literally that's it. It's just a networking environment. And because you can only do so much networking with drip campaigns and emails and phone calls and social media. So.
Well, and part of it too is anyone that's gone to trade shows or events or tried to push product or push their business, I think when you think of the idea of it, especially as an inventor, you're like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to set my table up, I'm going to show them what I've made, and then I'm just taking orders. I'm just going to see how fast I can count the money. And the reality is there are externalities to that situation that you may or may not have accounted for.
Fancy word.
Yeah,
You just looked that up, dude.
I had
word
it on my
of the
phone.
day.
I got a word list down here of things I got to work into the conversation. Let me hit my next word down here. But you might be walking into a situation where it might not be so sweet, and it might not be, you might be walking into pure criticism. So again, coming back to that, having that thick skin, but also balancing it with, are you listening to what the people that you think your target market are saying to you when you go to these events and do all these things?
But also you have to know enough, networking is about building or starting a relationship to get into a deeper conversation, but you have to know where that person's coming from. We just had a client that's building a hardware product, getting advice from software consultants.
Right.
Makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like, they're not wrong. They're wrong in that industry.
Yeah.
And they're taking it as Bible.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me. I was like, they've never walked the steps of MVP and prototype and manufacture ready.
Yeah.
And then finished product.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what brought us to this point of doing this together, is that you take advice from whoever you want, but you're not out of, if someone's, people love to give you their 2 cents, right? Again, go to a trade show, set your stuff up. People are going to give you all kinds of feedback. Qualifying that feedback is the valuable part, in my opinion, is you look at it and you go, so I build bikes and motorcycles and all this stuff.
At least you say it.
Yeah, in theory.
In theory.
If you've never spent more than $5,000 on a motorcycle, no matter what your opinion is, you're never going to buy anything from me. So it's not that I don't care about your input or your style. It's just that you're not my customer and you're not my target market. So your opinion then has to fall in line with the other opinions that come into the data set. That's what brought us to this point. That's what brought us to doing this and to doing our own incubator and accompanying podcasts and all that is just...
What can people expect from this podcast? Because during the incubators that we're running jointly, that's easy. We're going to talk about things that we're seeing, not specifically because, we love the effort, right? We love people to try and fail. And I say this and people hate that. They're like, we don't want to fail. Well, we're sitting here at whatever level of success we have because of what we learned from our failures.
We do product development here with small businesses and people come in, and one of the things that's very common that I see is they're prototype focused. I just need a prototype. I just need a prototype, blah, blah. And I'll go through and I'll do these design exercises to make sure we're designing it for the right product market fit, features and benefits and all this stuff. And there's this very predictable outcome, which is stall out, where you're really focused on the prototype, you're excited about it, you want to get after it, and I see it coming where you're going to have the prototype and then stall. Because the next stage, or honestly the things that probably should have been going on pre-prototype and or co-occurring, are all the product market fit, defining your customer base, customer discovery. So when you have prototype, now you can do customer validation. And that's one of the things that brought us to where we are. So that's one of the things I think people can expect is that pathway of how to do that with a support network that has actually done it and is continuing to do it and is still doing it, not only for other people, but for ourselves in our own businesses.
And that's tying, I think a lot of people get qualitative metrics. That's not easy to do, but it's easier than getting quantifiable metrics. And we do both because we know without both of them working in tandem, we're never going to find that beachhead and that insertion point in the marketplace and a price point.
Right.
Which I've never met anybody that got their price point right.
Yeah. Well, and even and we'll get into this more later, but what is your, you call it your alpha product, I call it the first mover product, but you get your product and it's great and it's good to go, and you're like, this is a chemical beaker, and it could also be a coffee mug. Okay, well, you have enough money to target one of those markets. Which one is it going to be?
Well, even if you had money to do both, would you?
Right. Should you?
Should you?
Right. Yeah. So I think that's one of the big things to expect from it. I think people can expect honesty, sometimes brutal honesty, both between each other, but also with anyone we talk to and the things we're seeing. And also, I didn't finish my soapbox rant, so I'd like to get back on it. But if I may, one of the things that gets me is if you're getting advice from someone, if you're doing all these things, I encourage people, even customers that I work with that come here for product design and development, ask the people that are giving you guidance, what was their biggest failure? Not even what was their biggest failure, what were some of their biggest lessons learned? Because to me, if someone says to you, everything I've done has been killer, that's a red flag for me. Because there's just no way. There has to be something
there goes my next
somewhere. Unless you're Bob, in which case everything's been freaking great the whole time.
I'm stuck with you at a fake wood table.
It's real wood.
Is that a soapbox? So people can expect soapboxes.
Yeah, they can expect a few of them from me.
I like the honesty part.
Yeah.
But I also think so we've talked about this, right? The things that get burned out from anybody after a certain stage is the passion to keep doing it. And I say, if you have a hobby that you love, treating it as a business or trying to treat it as a business, you're going to see how quickly you don't love that hobby as much anymore. So either keep it a hobby or get into a different mindset. But I think the other thing is the fun part of the journey. And that sounds so cliched on so many levels, but it helps you keep the passion for what you're and why you're really doing it. Like, you know, everybody wants to make money, but if that's your sole goal, there are a million other ways to make money without taking all the risk.
Yeah.
And I always go back to that first conversation when you asked me, how much do you think you need?
Yeah.
And I threw a number out and you thought I was insane. And you've gone way past that with many years added to it.
For sure.
I always remember that conversation.
Yeah, you weren't wrong. Was this all just
Wait,
so
hold on
that
a minute.
I could get to the point?
Twice you said that I wasn't wrong.
Don't expect that shouldn't be a theme on this show. That's for sure.
I got the name for the new podcast.
Bob's not always wrong. But I mean, I'm excited to. This is work that we've been doing for years, you know, both jointly and independently, and have found this kind of moment to be able to do it together. And so I think that it's just the time to kind of bring it all into, and to bring it to the forefront and put it in front of people and bring it into digestible kind of snippets that aren't, you know, these 2-hour-long preachy things, you know. So I think as far as the podcast goes, that's definitely one of my goals, is to keep it digestible for people so that you're on the run, you're on the move, you're doing this, you're doing that. You just want to see kind of what's up, what we're working on, and what our kind of deal of the week is. You know, then that's kind of one of my goals for sure.
Yeah, best practices, lessons learned.
Yeah.
We also want to create a turnkey network for people that have been in our boat as an idea inventor, as a future inventor, you know, where you can kind of dive in and on a certain level maybe play it safe or less risk before you jump in, because some of your ideas should never come to fruition.
Right.
And I think if you have one idea and you think it has to be successful, you better start observing the world around you and see where else that fits. Because people always go direct competition. Your biggest problem is not direct competition. It's all the other competition of human behavior and human habits and knee-jerk reaction of, no, I don't really need it.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll be fun, at least for the 2 or 3 weeks we're on the air.
Yeah.
Then it'll be over.
This blows up in our face somehow.
We run out of money. So we do need sponsors too, so look at that.
Yeah, it'll be fun. That's the main thing I expect, is that we will hopefully have a good time. You know, that's.
In my contract said I got a lot of free gifts. So
I don't know who's making those gifts.
I wrote that on my contract in pencil.
All right, man.
Until next week.
Yeah, until next week,
We're
brother.
gonna do topic, or we'll just see what happens over the next few days.
I mean, we'll just see where life takes us.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
we'll have topics eventually.
Yeah. Peace, everybody.